He was a frequent guest of our program in the past, and it's our pleasure to welcome him today. Dave, great to be with you. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Frank. It's good to talk to you. Haven't talked to you in a while.
So tell me how you're spending your time now, Dave.
Well, I'm not hooked up with any team, but I'm following the White Sox pretty closely. My son is coaching there, and, of course, Tony's managing there now, so I hear from him on a pretty regular basis and kind of give him a rundown of what I see, and it keeps me kind of attached.
Was there any thought to joining that organization? I'm sure you could have if you wanted.
Well, Tony inquired as to whether I was interested, but, after going through cancer 5 years ago, I have some lingering repercussions from the treatment, from the radiation, and my balance is not good, and I just don't have the same energy that I had before, so I had to turn it down and kind of watch from the sideline.
Are you giving – I imagine you're impressed with this White Sox pitching staff. Anybody jumping out at you in particular?
Oh, my goodness. They have some tremendous arms over there. They got Giolito, who had a great year last year. They got Lance Lynn, who everybody's familiar with. A lefty by the name of Rodon, who's off to a really good start, and Kuchel as starters. And then they got this young kid named Cease. And this kid, boy, would I love to have him as a coach. He's got a great fastball. He's got a real good slider. He's got a unhittable curveball when he's able to get it over, and he's got a decent changeup. He's got everything that it takes to be a superstar pitcher, and all he's got to do now is learn how to use his pitches. And to me, he's got tremendous potential to be an outstanding pitcher.
What about Lance? You had him, of course, in the beginning of his career, and he came up as a big guy. Then he lost a lot of weight, and now he's back being a big guy, but he's still as effective as hell.
He's a real interesting pitcher because basically he only throws one pitch, even though he makes that one pitch 3 different pitches. He says, I'm just a fastball pitcher. Well, he's a sinker ball pitcher. He's a cutter off his fastball pitcher, and he's a 4-seam fastball pitcher that occasionally 96, 97 miles an hour. So he's got real weapons and tremendous makeup. I mean, this guy is just fearsome out there on the mound. He's very aggressive, goes after the hitters, and fun to watch.
Dave Duncan with us, Hollywood Casino Press Box on the all-new 590 The Fan. You didn't see Jack Flaherty at his best last night, but I'm sure you have seen him really good. There have been comparisons with Jack and Chris Carpenter. What do you see when you're watching Jack Flaherty?
Well, I saw a pretty good pitcher. Unfortunately, the defense made some mistakes behind him early, and that kind of put him in a hole. And I think that what you saw as an end result was not him. He was much better than what the end result was, but he's got talent. I mean, the guy's 8-1 now, and what a start. What a start. He's got a chance of having a real big year, and he's got the stuff to do it.
What about your guy?
And he's got Yadi Molina behind the plate.
Yeah.
Which is a huge asset.
I used to love doing live shots at Busch Stadium before the game and just watching the 3 of you walk to the bullpen before a game. I always felt it was like 3 lawyers going into the courtroom. It was you, Yachty, and that starting pitcher. It was really like the 3 of you, one game plan, all on the same wavelength. The amount of preparation, that must have been one of the things you enjoyed most, preparing it for a start.
Well, we were able to develop a really good interest in doing that with all of our pitchers. And, of course, when you have Yachty always amazed me. He had such a great memory of past experiences with different hitters and being able to recall a particular pitcher against a hitter and something that might have taken place that was important to remember. But it was and all the pitchers, like Carpenter and Wainwright and people like that. They really bought into what we were doing, and they encouraged the other pitchers as they came up or came into our organization to follow that routine. So we had everybody on the same page, which was really good. And, of course, we had Marty Mason in the bullpen, who was a great pitching coach himself. And we were all on the same page, and I think that's what really helped us have some success.
What about Waino the other night? I don't know if you were watching, 39 years old, 8 innings and a one-hitter.
I read about it. I didn't get to see it. I'm trying to watch all the White Sox games, and a lot of times the schedule is such that they're playing at the same time. So I don't get to see many of the Cardinals games. But Waino's amazing. He's a perfect example of a guy that has gone through the different phases of pitching. When he was young, he didn't know what to do. Then he learned what to do and how to use his pitches, and he had great stuff. And then as his pitches diminished a little bit, he figured out a way to keep getting hitters out with less than what he had before. And there aren't a lot of pitchers that are able to do that, but Waino's really a smart guy, and he loves the game of baseball, loves to pitch. That's what's kept him going, his love for the game.
So Tony has caught some heat up in Chicago, but he's got one of the best teams in baseball. He's in first place. I'm wondering, have you ever had a conversation with him about, the home run incident where should the hitter have been swinging? And he's had a little bit of controversy this year, and you've seen him have a lot of controversy over the years. But what's your kind of overview on his season?
Well, I think he's doing a great job up there. He's getting everybody to buy in. The players up there are realizing that you got to do more than just go out on the field and catch the ball and hit the ball to be a winning team. You've got to know how to win, and that's what he's going to do with those young players. He's going to teach them how to win games and what's important in winning games, and he's going to be a huge asset to the players individually and the team. We didn't talk about that home run, but that's kind of a little bit of an old school attitude that you don't do anything to embarrass the opposition. You have respect for the game, and you don't do things that are going to be controversial. You just don't do it. But in today's game, it's different. Nobody seems to mind that. Nobody puts the emphasis on it like we used to do years ago.
What do you think of some of these recent rule changes, like the 3-batter minimum?
It changes the game. It changes the game. I don't particularly like it. I can see why they did it, because it was getting to the point where managers were using 7, 8, 9 pitchers a game, just one after the other. And it was slowing things down a lot. I can see why they did it. I don't particularly like it. I don't like the extra innings, putting a guy on second base more than anything else. I don't like doing that. It kind of, I don't know, for me, it takes away from the competitiveness, and I just I don't like that.
So why did pitching change from the goal of a complete game for a starter to something less? Like if you go 6 innings and you allow 3 runs, that's a quality start. When and why did this change?
I think that because the quality of the kids that were pitching in relief. Now you look around at all these relief pitchers, you don't see hardly any of them that throw under 95 miles an hour. And I think as the emphasis was put on power pitching, especially in the bullpen bullpens got better and they got deeper. And it was less emphasis on that starting pitcher going 6, 7 innings every time he went out there, because you had more depth in the bullpen. And And the hitters, I mean, they started changing the way they approached hitting. They started from trying to get on base to trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark every time. So, the third time through the lineup became a little bit of an issue for a lot of the starting pitchers, and they had those arms out in the bullpen, so they went to them. And it's just that part of the game has changed because I think the quality of the player has gotten better.
We're talking with Dave Duncan, who has one of the great resumes in baseball history. He coached the Cy Young Award winner in 83, 90, 92, 2005. And Dave, like the names, if you look at their stats when they weren't with you as opposed to their stats that were with you, it's amazing. We're talking Bennis and Woody Williams and Bottenfield and Stewart and Welch. It's incredible what you did. And I'm wondering, I think we've discussed this before, that your genius was not so much in the mechanics angle, it was more the mental angle. Take me through that a little bit.
Well, I think what I tried to do was identify what the pitcher was capable of doing consistently and building his game around that. And you can do that. You don't have to throw 100 miles an hour to get hitters out. You can throw like Jeff Suppan, 87, 88 at most, but he had real good control and he had a little bit of movement in both ways, sink and a little cut, so he could make his fastball move, which is really an effective thing to do if you're capable of doing it. And he had a changeup that was outstanding, and he had a curveball that he could throw for strikes. So he had weapons. And then it becomes just having confidence in the weapons you have and knowing how to use them. And then if you know the hitters well enough, you can pick the weaknesses of the hitters and apply whatever you have to those weaknesses and have success. So there's a lot of different ways to be a successful pitcher. You don't always have to have a great curveball and a great fastball and a great slider, and you can get it done with less if you apply the mental part of it to the game.
Well, what you do with a guy like Andy Bennis, whose numbers were okay away from you, and then he comes here and he wins 17 and 18 games?
Well, I think with Andy, it was just I think when we first hooked up, I don't think Andy had a lot of self-confidence. And I just encouraged him to simplify his game. Don't try to do more than you're doing. Just do what you're doing on a consistent basis. Be consistent with what you're doing. And he had good control. He had real good control of his fastball. He didn't have a great breaking ball, but he had a breaking ball that he could throw for a strike. And he mixed in a changeup on occasion, but he was basically a fastball pitcher. Didn't have a lot of movement, but he could turn the ball over a little bit if he needed to, and he could cut the ball a little bit if he needed to. So he just needed to know when to do it. And I think by buying into the preparation of knowing the opposition, knowing the opposing hitters and their weaknesses, their tendencies, their strengths, he was able to better apply what he was able to do to getting hitters out.
Dave, you had one of the more remarkable beginnings as a player, because I believe you made your major league debut at age 18, and then you went back to the minor leagues for a couple of years after that, then had a real solid career. How do you remember that? 18 years old in the big leagues, what was that like?
Well, Frank, that was back when there was a rule in baseball that if you got a bonus over a certain amount of money to sign to play, you had to spend the next year in the big leagues. So I wasn't in the big leagues at 18 because I was a big league player. I was there because the rules of baseball made me be there. It was a wasted year for me, really. So I don't take a lot of credit for that year, but I was able to get back up there and put 10 years in. So It was a good career for me.
All right, before we let you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I wasn't a great offensive player at the major league level, but I did okay catching.
Well, you hit 109 home runs, so you had some power. There's no doubt about it. Before we let you go, we want to hit you with some no hedging questions. Okay, Dave, you can take one pitcher that you coached in your major league career to win one game to save the world from communism. Who would that pitcher be?
Well, my first thought is Dave Stewart, but I would have to put Carpenter in the same category. I'd have to put Wainwright in the same category at their best, when they were at their best. But it's hard. I was fortunate enough to be able to catch and coach some really good, talented pitchers.
All right. Your best Reggie Jackson story, your former teammate. You got a good one?
Well, after he went to the Yankees, we got in a fight with the Yankees one day, and I ended up wrestling with him. And when we got through, I don't think either one of us knew who we were wrestling with. We both just stood there and looked at each other and kind of threw our hands up in the air. No, he was a very good friend of mine. I socialized with him a lot in the off season, and we did a lot of things together. He was a very good friend of mine.
All right, you're in the Cardinal dugout. Who's the one hitter you did not want to see up with the game on the line, the one opposing hitter?
Oh, my goodness. Boy.
Who couldn't you get out?
Well, there's nobody that really stands in my mind that just dominated us. I'm sure there was somebody, but golly, there's so many guys. I think about George Brett, Wade Boggs.
Pretty good.
Guys like that, Rod Carew. I know they were all done before I was with the Cardinals, probably, but guys like that, you just knew they were going to get their hits. There was nothing you could do about it, and you just hoped that you could keep them in the ballpark.
All right, even though you were an American League All-Star in 1971 and you hit 109 career home runs, who's the one pitcher that you just didn't want to see when you had a bat in your hands?
Joe Coleman.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure nobody knows who he is.
The lefty.
But I used to, it got to the point where when I saw my name in the lineup and he was pitching, I'd go to the manager and say, "Are you sure you didn't make a mistake there? Are you sure you want me to face this guy again?" I bet if I took 10 at bats against him, he would strike me out eight times. He had great breaking balls, and I wasn't a real good breaking ball hitter.
Excluding Tony La Russa, which manager jumped out at you that this guy, man, he always does a really good job?
Dick Williams.
Nice.
Yeah, Dick Williams was the first manager that I played for that I really felt like never made a decision mistake. Didn't always had the right guy in the bullpen ready when it was needed. Always said the right things when the club needed something being said to him. And he was tough. I mean, he was really tough. He didn't take anything from anybody, but he was right, and he knew how to get the most out of the players.
You were teammates with Gaylord Perry in Cleveland. How did catching that spitter work out?
Well, the first year I caught Gaylord Perry, he didn't have a great year, and he made a lot of mistakes with the spitter. So the next spring we talked about him trying to throw a split finger, which basically does the exact same thing that a spitter does. I mean, same rotation, same movement, everything about it. And so we worked all spring on the split finger or fork ball, and it was really good. And I tried to convince him that was as good as a spitter, and probably he would make fewer mistakes with it. Well, he threw that split finger the entire season, And up until the last series we played against Boston, and we're in like the seventh inning or something like that. And he had this thing with, I can't remember who the player was on Boston's team, but he called me out to the mound and he says, "Look, I'm gonna try a couple of spitters on this guy." And I said, "Okay." It wasn't a spitter, it was a Vaseline ball. And I said, "Okay, whatever you want." And so anyway, the first one he threw to the hitter, the guy hit it out of the ballpark. And so I think we played a couple more. He pitched a couple more times after that, and he didn't throw any more spitters. So actually, he only threw the spitter, the Vaseline ball, the first year I caught him.
And where did he put the Vaseline? On his neck, right?
Everywhere. Had it in his hair, had it on his neck, had it on in front of, where the V in the front of your shirt is. He had it everywhere.
Wow. All right, I know you and Tony are like brothers, but what's the biggest feud you guys ever had, or the biggest disagreement you ever had with Tony La Russa? You had to argue about something.
No, we had discussions. A lot of times we had discussions, but I knew who the boss was. He listened to my opinions, and he took them serious and thought about them, but in the end, he was the one that made the decision, and I knew that, and that was okay with me. As long as he would listen to what I had to say, everything was fine with me. But I can never remember having any kind of disagreement that lasted any period of time.
All right, you're a general manager. You're starting a baseball franchise, and you can take any player in baseball history at age 22 to start your franchise with. Who do you take?
Yadi Molina.
Wow, love it.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about the Hall of Fame? Because we bring your name up that pitching coaches and coaches should go in. Have you ever thought about it, Dave?
Well, I think coaches should be considered, but it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. As a matter of fact, I've even thought if it should ever happen, I might not even go or might not even accept it. Simply because they put sports writers ahead, they put radio people, they put TV people ahead, they put umpires ahead of coaches. And there's been a lot of coaches that have made significant differences with players, and they're it's just like umpires used to say, if you got in an argument with an umpire, they would always say, "Oh, you're just a coach." And that's, to me, the attitude that the Hall of Fame has towards coaches. They don't recognize coaches as a meaningful part of the game, which I think is a mistake.
Final thought. What would you want somebody to say about Dave Duncan's time in baseball?
I don't know, that he helped guys be better.
Dave, yep, you did more than that. You helped guys be great. You're the best that ever was as a pitching coach in Major League Baseball. It's such an honor to hear your voice. I'm glad to hear you're doing well, and we're rooting for the White Sox too. We're rooting for the White Sox and Cardinals in a World Series.
That'd be fun. It's going to be a good year for both teams, I think, if they can get healthy. They got to get healthy.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one, Dave.
All right, Frank. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Great. Dave Duncan joining us. What a career he had.
What fun that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
He goes yachty.
Yeah.
Well, he does affect a lot of things.
I was going to say, that's a catcher respecting a catcher right there. And for a guy who was a catcher and became a manager of pitchers, it makes sense that that would be one of his go-tos.
He's 75. Imagine, Tony tried to get him, he said. Can you imagine if 76-year-old Tony La Russa and 75-year-old Dave Duncan, and they win a world championship with those two? That would have been crazy.